This will be the fifth country Poland's new president, Karol Nawrocki, will visit. In Germany, he will meet Franz-Walter Steinmeier, the German president, and Chancellor Friedrich Merz. In addition to security issues and European Union matters, another topic will be discussed. This is, of course, a matter of compensation for the damage caused by World War II. It is clear that this topic will come up in discussions in Berlin, and the President of Poland will demand a response from the German side, rather than simply avoiding the issue. This topic is by no means closed. German media are already talking about the Polish president's visit to Germany. Most commentators and journalists emphasize that this will be a difficult visit for the hosts, above all for Chancellor Merz. He is the primary addressee of Poland's demands and expectations. It is emphasized that Karol Nawrocki will be a more difficult partner than President Duda, and even more so than Prime Minister Tusk. Karol Nawrocki spoke about the need for Germany to pay reparations, also for the sake of clarity in Warsaw's partnership with Berlin during the presidential campaign. He also spoke about this on the anniversary of the outbreak of World War II at Westerplatte. We must finally settle the issue of reparations from the German side, which I, as President of Poland, unequivocally demand for the common good, for our future. 6,200 billion zloty is the amount of compensation owed to us by Germany, as calculated by a commission set up during the Law and Justice government to estimate Polish war losses. The losses suffered by Poland and Polish citizens at the hands of the German state during World War II are enormous. On the one hand, there are material losses, the destruction wrought by the Germans from September 1939 until the last days of the occupation. On the other hand, there is the exploitation of the potential of Polish industry, everything that could have worked for the Polish state, and this resource was used by the German state. On top of that, of course, there are the human losses. The Germans believe that Poland waived reparations in 1953. During the communist regime, specifically under Beirut, under pressure from the USSR, a statement was issued regarding the absence of claims against the German Democratic Republic, which did not have the formal binding nature of an international treaty. At the moment, we are presenting losses that may be calculated. The German state needs to face up to this because it is high time. Of course, it was difficult to raise this issue with West Germany and the Polish People's Republic at a time when Polish international policy was practically entirely conducted from Moscow. But today, when we have a sovereign state, it is only natural that this issue must finally be resolved. Nevertheless, Knut Abraham, Germany's coordinator for German-Polish cooperation, stated that the issue of reparations is now closed and that a modern interpretation of this issue is needed, proposing instead investments in Poland's security. The message to the Polish president should be that any strengthening of Poland's security means a strengthening of Germany's security, regardless of whether it involves financial aid, weapon systems, or Bundeswehr units. So with the German Bundeswehr and arms supplies, Germany wants to guarantee Poland's security against Russian aggression. Looking at the state of the German Bundeswehr, this is, in my opinion, laughable. The Bundeswehr doesn't have the required capabilities. Germany is not the president's only destination. Straight from Germany, Karol Nawrocki is flying to France. In Paris, he will meet French President Emmanuel Macron. This is a visit within the framework of the Weimar Triangle, which on the one hand is important from the point of view of Poland's role in the EU. These largest countries really have a lot to say when it comes to the future of our continent and supporting NATO's eastern flank. The Polish president will talk to the French president, as he did in Berlin, about security, but also about issues that are common and contentious for our countries within the European Union. The president will present in Berlin and Paris his own position on European affairs. Of course, Poland is and will remain an important member of the EU. In October, the president will travel to Estonia for the meeting of the presidents of the Ariaulos group in Tallinn.
The Russian-Belarusian ZAPAD military exercises are entering their next phase. Minsk has announced this phase will involve testing the most powerful weapons at the Kremlin's disposal. According to experts, Russia's actions are leading directly to escalation. The situation is being monitored by both Polish and allied armed forces. Observers from the United States, invited by Minsk, have arrived at the training ground near Borisov in Belarus. The Americans are closely monitoring Moscow's actions, not just in the eastern flank of NATO, but also in the Far East. The surprise American visit in Borisov is part of a Belarusian propaganda op, a show of supposed transparency. For the Americans, however, it is a unique opportunity to officially and symbolically demonstrate their activity in this direction. Minsk has no choice. On one hand, Minsk is clearly increasingly concerned about escalation, but on the other, the Belarusian regime must play the game contrived by the Kremlin. Speaking of a higher level of exercises, operational and strategic, I will say that we have managed to plan the deployment of stronger or more powerful strike capabilities in the system of these exercises. Escalation. This word has been on the lips of all analysts for over a week. Russia is using hypersonic missiles, ballistic missiles, and strategic bombers in its maneuvers. Missile frigates and submarines have been deployed at sea. This is a demonstration intended to terrify the West. In 2021, the ZAPAD maneuvers were the pretext for the concentration of troops that struck Ukraine just a few months later.
We continue to call on Russia and Belarus to fully comply with the OSCE 2011 Vienna document, which requires prior notification for military activities. And we remain actively engaged in preparing for any potential security threats surrounding ZAPAD.
This includes both diplomatic and, above all, military action. Putin wants to put pressure on countries that continue to support Ukraine, but also on NATO's eastern flank. The Kremlin is trying, at all costs, to divide NATO. The Russians, in cooperation with Belarus, are practicing the extensive use of mechanized units, plus units equipped with long-range surface-to-surface weapons, such as Iskander missile launchers. In my opinion, this is simply a simulation of exercises in case of war with NATO countries, a scenario indicating an attempt at conventional combat with NATO countries. Putin is demanding that NATO troops withdraw to their pre-1997 borders. He is repeating this now in talks with the Americans. Instead, however, he is getting a completely different response: the expansion of the alliance to include Sweden and Finland, and a unity that NATO has never seen before.
The latest Russian missile technology, for example, the difference now between Lithuania on the front line and Luxembourg, The Hague or Madrid is 5 to 10 minutes. That's the time it takes this missile to reach these parts of Europe. So we are all under direct threat from the Russians. We are all on the eastern flank now, whether you live in London or in Tallinn. There is no...
The awareness of the threat has reached most European countries, at least judging by their initial reactions. The response to the Russian drone attack on Poland was immediate and, most importantly, measurable. The deployment of additional forces and resources to the eastern flank and the rapid implementation of Operation Eastern Sentry clearly show that the era of Russian diplomatic threats is over and that NATO is taking up the challenge posed by the Kremlin.
The declaration made at the recent meeting between the presidents of Poland and the United States may be of groundbreaking importance for the strengthening of Poland's security.
We're very happy. If anything, we'll put more there if they want, but they've long wanted to have a larger presence. We have some countries that have more, not too many, but no, they'll be staying in Poland. We're very much aligned with Poland.
Discussions on increasing and maintaining the presence of American troops in Poland, similar to the American bases in Germany, were later continued behind closed doors. On the Polish side, they are to be coordinated by the head of the National Security Bureau, Sławomir Cęckiewicz, and on the American side by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. We need to move beyond the phase of bilateral talks between the Polish president and the US president and move on to the consultation stage. However, this requires cooperation with the government led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and there is no such cooperation. It's been almost a month and a half since the Polish president was sworn in. Have there been any meetings with the foreign minister? And there are more and more indications that this is a deliberate move to prevent an increase in the presence of American soldiers in Poland. If this president-government conflict escalates, and it seems that it is escalating, given the attacks on the National Security Bureau and thus on the president of Poland, then it is difficult to talk about any cooperation. The declaration would strengthen Poland, and at a particularly dangerous moment. President Karol Nawrocki is seeking an increased US military presence in Poland, but the problem is that there is no mention of this on the part of the government. The suspicion is that Donald Tusk would prefer the presence of the Bundeswehr in Poland to that of the US Army. There are many indications that we may currently be dealing with a strategy similar to that of Donald Tusk's first government, when attempts were made to weaken Poland's cooperation with the United States and at least delay, if not prevent, the establishment of the first American base in Poland. This is what Tusk, then also the Prime Minister, told President Bush in 2008, which only became public information many years later from declassified notes. I will say one more thing that I will not say publicly. When I was in Russia, I managed to thaw relations. That's what we wanted. However, it came at a price. It was not an easy task. At that time, Germany was very strongly pushing for strategic cooperation with Putin's Russia and simultaneously pushing the United States out of Europe. And in Poland, Donald Tusk's government was trying to do the same. During Donald Tusk's previous terms in office, we saw the collapse of the construction of the American missile defense shield in our country, which could already have been in place. Unfortunately, Donald Tusk gave up on this shield and Barack Obama eventually announced the abandonment of the project. At that time, Prime Minister Tusk and his government argued for the need for a reset in relations with Russia and close cooperation, symbolized by the close meetings between Tusk and Putin.
Prime Minister Putin said very seriously that he wants to find other solution, not Iskander near Poland.
Today, Tusk and Sikorski claim that they have always led a completely serious, unchanging, anti-Russian international policy.